let's get right to it, and hopefully our viewers find it just excited as well. All right. So by the end of this webinar, you will know the answers to the questions. Why the horse's mane splits halfway up their neck, why some horses' mane go to the right and some horses' mane goes to the left. What does the direction of the horse's mane have to do with the saddle fit, and how to use the webinar information to protect your horse from long-term damage. So when you Google, what does it mean when horses have a split mane? There's literally over thousands and thousands of answers. One of them is, the other is when the mane lays all on one side on the neck, part way down, and switches all the way on the other side of the neck. This type of split shows soreness, mental stress, some sort of bodily issues. That's just from last year, September. And as I said, in 51 seconds, not even in a second, you get over 3,000 answers. But today we want to talk about what I was saying. Here you see a horse's mane split evenly all the way from withers to pole, left and right. And like I just shown in the previous slides, going part of the neck to the right and other part to the left. So there are, as I said, many different reasons and opinions, and people say, okay, why would I listen to Jochen Schleser? Well, over the last 40 years, we have recorded and measured over 250,000 horses worldwide. And as a rider myself, and as a person who lectures in many different universities, I come across a pattern, and I seen it as a saddle maker, and I even wrote it in my book that we often forget to look at this. The mane is the first indicator that there is something going on with the horse. Who would have thought? And of course, as a farrier, I will always say, oh, it's the shoes first. Or as a trainer says, oh, because you didn't train the horse straight. Or as a saddle maker said, the saddle doesn't fit, and that's why the mane goes the one way or the other. Unfortunately, as a rider, and why I'm so obsessed with saddle fitting, is um, I I really didn't pay attention why and what's going on with my horse's mane. My horse's mane went to the right. My horse's left shoulder was much bigger, and I crippled my horse, and I have back then when I was competing for the German team, I was not even thinking about saddle fitting. Yeah, even as a saddle maker, we would not really think that deep how much impact it can have. So over the years, I met a lot of people, and of course, surrounding myself with expert, they says, well, you need to look at the way the farriers do it. The farriers do orthopedic shoes, when the horse has uneven feet, and we need to make sure that we adapt the metal to where the horse's hoof is grown, and the same thing with the metal on the saddle. We call it an orthopedic saddle fit. So when the mane splits on the horse, either straight down the side or partly on the neck on the left, partly on the neck to the right, or the mane goes all the way to one side or all the way to the other side, it tells you a lot about the horse. Okay, so we need to be very conscientious. Please don't make the mistake, as I did as a horse lover, rider. We need to make sure that we look at we need to look at the orthopedic saddle fit as well. And as it says right there, what does orthopedic means? It's a Greek word. Orthos means keep it straight. And that's what it is. And that's the purpose of making the saddle. So the purpose of the saddle is the purpose of the orthopedic saddle fit is to give the horse the chance to travel straight, to keep the saddle straight, so the rider sits straight. And unfortunately, there's many misunderstanding in this industry about asymmetric tree adjustment or saddle adjustment. We don't want to call that asymmetric. We rather refer to an orthopedic saddle adjustment. And if you ignore it, right, and you keep blaming the shoes, you keep blaming yourself, or you keep buying constantly new saddles or always refitting the saddles, yeah, you can do it, right? So I always like the saying, the person knows the how will follow the person knows the why. Figure out why the mane goes to the right side and why the horse's mane goes to the left side, or why does it split? If you don't, that is a typical impact to the rider. He's completely hanging off to one side. I mean, there's several studies around the world where they have shown that the interface, which we call the saddle, just follows into the hollow side, and the rider somehow tries to balance them. He says, well, I don't ride dressage, I ride jumping. You'd be surprised how many jumpers are way off target. Well, I cleared the fence. Long term, you're always landing, in this case, hard on the front right leg. That cannot be sustainable for the horse and rider. So it's very interesting to see most of the time where the mane goes is where the saddle goes. So the mane goes to the left. Most often the rider and the saddle slips to the left. Or the mane goes to the right. Most often the saddle and the rider slips to the right. So mane right, rider right. Mane left, rider left. So if your horse's mane splits down the middle straight, most likely you don't see a problem. Here's another interesting fun fact. From all these horses I have measured, 70% from all horses are stronger on the left side and the mane goes to the right. Do a little test. Go next time to the barn and count how many horses you have there. And if there's 10, you will see 7 of them, the mane goes to the right, 2 of them, the mane goes to the left, and 1 of the horse has the mane split down the center. That happens often. So if you say, I don't care how it fits me, I can adopt, I'm a professional, what do you think you're going to do to the horse? Right? What do you think, how will that impact the way the horse suffers? So the ultimate goal, and that's what we call orthopedic saddle fit, is we got to keep the spine of the rider straight over the horse's spine. We can't sit left or right, and we can't lean back or forward. Sitting on the saddle, riding on the horse, it's like standing straight, except I don't stand on my feet when I ride my horse. I sit on my seat bones, but I still want to have shoulder, hips, and heels as if I'm standing. So the one thing you need to know, and this is written by the late Dr. Carey Ridgway, and it's so often misunderstood. We need to do everything we can do to achieve straightness, right? The horse is a master of compensation and a master of hiding pain, because I, as a horse, do not like to be picked to be eaten, because the predator always looks for the horse what is lame. So lameness, okay, will also cause the saddle to slip. And when the saddle slips because the horse is lame, there are several articles written about this, but our duty as a horseback rider is to make sure I'm sitting straight on my horse, front to back, left to right. If I ignore this, there are so many different occasions where we see unevenness in the horse. And the question is, why is it uneven? There's people who have written in the international dressage in Britain. They put a lot of clinics out there. They teach a lot of people, but in the end of the day, your horse will push with the left shoulder, the saddle against the left back of the spine, and then boom, just like in the illustration there, the horse tries to compensate. try to put your ego to the side and say, okay, now that I looked and listened to this webinar and I understand the saddle doesn't automatically sits itself straight, the saddle needs to be orthopedically adjusted to be straight. I want to make sure, dressage rider or jumping rider, right? I want to make sure I don't get kicked over to one side anymore when I ignore the dominant side of the horse. And as I said, as a farrier, as a trainer, I always look at the, what's the word? At the profession I do. And you say, well, you, Jochen Schleser, you make saddles and you used to ride internationally and you teach and have judged and blah, blah, blah. Of course you will talk, it's only the saddle. That's, yes, an underlying point of mine, because we all listen to the same radio station, WIIFM, What is in for me? I would like you to call us to help you with the saddle, because that creates business for us. And what's in for you, you don't have to sit crooked and hurt your horse or yourself. And unfortunately, most often we see people who says, you know what, I can fix my horse. I buy this book here where I can launch my horse and the horse will be straight in 6 weeks. I'm sorry, right? There's many papers in research and medical doctors who have written articles about why the horses need to be ridden correctly, straight. Just with force, it's not going to happen. So some people say, oh, you know, the horse is uneven because of birth trauma. Absolutely. There is, as a matter of fact, a veterinarian who wrote a big book, like a big coffee table book. I mean, it's massive, and he called it Balance, written by Dr. Gerd Heuschmann. And there he describes there's 5 reasons, and one of them is birth trauma, why the horse can be more uneven, or more left dominant, more right dominant, or why the mane goes to the left or right. As I showed you in the beginning of the webinar, there's many opinions, but myself, as somebody who's over 45 years in this industry and measured over 250,000 horses worldwide, I have seen a very, very interesting pattern. And as I said, we have another category starting from the teeth. We have the high heel, low heel syndrome. Many horses are left heel higher than the right heel. You've seen this often. You know, one of the people who made a big article and wrote a good part of it is Dr. Carrie Ridgway. You know, you see that is the case, which the percentages I quoted to you often. And how does the mane split relates to the saddle slip? When the bigger shoulder, here clearly the left shoulder is bigger, sits higher, it pushes the mane comb over to the hollow side, the right side, and the entire mane falls to the right. Of course, you can say, well, I'm riding with trainer so-and-so, and he wants all his horse's mane going to the left, and we bandage and wet the mane, and we wrap it overnight, and the mane will stay there. Okay, so once the horse's mane is dry and they shake itself and they run around, naturally it goes to the hollow side. So how does that then, if I have a horse, this is exactly my case with my horse here, what happens is my horse's mane, like 7 out of 10 horses, goes to the right, bigger left shoulder. When the shoulder moves, it pushes the saddle on the front left and then chunks and kicks that saddle over to the right. Again, if you ignore it, the horse will deform. You will have SI problem. There's all kinds of issues. Sure, you can say, well, I use pads. I keep stepping in my left stirrup. You cannot force the metal into the cartilage of the horse. because eventually that side gets more hollow and hollow. The side keeps pushing and pushing it over. And then under the withers, you see all kinds of inflammation. You could say, well, then I don't ride until the horse is 100% even and I have trained him properly, and then I'm going to start riding again. You know, sometimes you cannot make the horses straight because the upper arm, okay, look at this upper arm here versus there. You cannot re-bend a bone because the horse's skeleton, you know, the last growth spurt and the last, I have a brain fart right now, is the skeleton is not developed until he's 6.5. You know, so most people start riding when the horse is 3. Of course, other industries sometimes start even earlier, but the muscles will compensate. You know, you can see this muscle here is different than that. That you can train, but you cannot retrain this upper arm here, how it's formed. Some horses has transitional vertebrae, not very uncommon, very hard to detect. Or the first 2 ribs are not even, okay? So this is 1 rib, and the first and the second is grown together, right? So this horse will be uneven. Now, that doesn't mean the horse is not ever able to be a phenomenal horse all the way up to the Olympics. You know, there's many horses who are not 100% symmetric, and many horses who have the mane going from one side to the next side. But the fact is, if I ignore it, or trying to sugarcoat it by saying, oh, I trained the horse correct, you can't, you know. So like this here for Dr. Sharon May Davis writes, you know, so sometimes you see asymmetric, it's not just lameness, or like it's been written up in another study by Dr. Sue Dyson, you know, or because of a twisted tree. There is multiple reasons, but in the end of the day, if I ignored that bigger left shoulder, that blue here, that is the cartilage, will come back. And if the tree is not orthopedically adjusted, the metal of the tree, the saddle doesn't care, it will damage the cartilage. And then bone, and this is the top edge of the shoulder blade right there, the bone will grow bone under attack if there is not enough room. Yeah, your saddle may twist and cause all kinds of problems. And then often the saddle bridges. Here we have a horse where the mane goes to the left, bigger right shoulder. You can see the horse will then brace, go hollow, and you often see the white marks under the cantle. This more because the saddle went to the right. This picture shows you the opposite again. Sorry, the saddle went in this picture to the left. And here you see in the saddle, pommel tips down and then goes to the right. So this is the opposite to this horse. But here you can see pressure on the back right, and then it drives into the hollow side, and there's massive pressure on the front left. I have surrounded myself with many experts worldwide, and I wanted to really understand why horses behave the way they are. There's many behavior in different disciplines, many different researchers, such as those 3 professors here, and even in the racing industry. You know, it's hugely important. Think about it. They're racing always the same direction, train always the same direction. Very few cities or countries in Europe train both directions. So the majority goes to the left. Same in vaulting. The majority of the horses goes to the left. If I go to South America, a big university in Brazil, you know, they see a lot of problems where the saddle keeps tipping to the right. They use thermography. It was super interesting, and how Saddle Fit for Life have now joined with many universities worldwide. My point to you is, when we look at all these research which we can do now, you know, where we gallop horses on the treadmill, we can see how the rider rides, how the saddle functions. In the end of the day, when the horse is dead, and equine specialists like Dr. Catalina Thiersen says, we can see how the bone deforms. Bone grows bone when it's under attack. And it's unbelievable how many horses, especially on the left, grow bone. Okay. And this is not normal, all these growth here, if it's not adjustable. So we, as people who love horses, want to make sure they can enjoy their life. They have give them the best opportunity. Myself, I have written 2 books, one in German, one in English. And on this book here, it was the first, I demonstrate often we have the problem that the channel is too narrow and it goes to the right. And if, as I said, we ignore that, the horse will suffer. Yes, there is all kinds of options you have. You can't straighten a tree, but not every tree can be straightened when the saddle tree is a wood tree. Lots of so-called saddle fitters go out and they have a wood tree, what they put in a hydraulic tree machine, like a press, and then they break the rivets. So those cannot be broken, and you cannot do an asymmetric or orthopedic adjustment because they will twist. There's other saddles, such as the saddles who have the adapt tree. This is the one we use, or the virtual custom fit system, where you can easily open one side. In this case, the left side is bigger than the right side, in order to give that saddle the ability. Here you see how the saddle works, or the adjustment here. Okay, this adjusts the tree width, and this adjusts the bigger or the weaker shoulder. Then there are saddles where the tree has, as I said, the wood tree here, and the stirrup bar is attached to the metal plate. You cannot adjust those. Those you can with the gullet plate, the stirrup bar is adjusted in the center. You can easily do the saddle to an orthopedic fit. And the saddle, as I said, what has the wood tree, will twist if you trying to do it, right? Because of the structure, the way I showed you here. And of course, the saddle will deform. But what is a bigger concern, in my point of view, or bigger things we need to look into it, is what happens to the horse? How does the horse react if we don't look at it? So people say, oh yeah, science is not always right. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I feel strongly that we must avoid pain and damage to the horses with ill-fitting saddles by following science and not opinion. And I like this slide. Odia gave me that little cutout, and I thought it was quite cute. If you're not a scientist and you disagree with scientific about science, it's actually not a disagreement. You are just wrong. Science is not truth. Science is finding the truth. When science changes its opinion, it didn't lie to you, it learned more. And this is why I surround myself with experts who look into it, what makes the main split to one side or the other. And as I showed you the very first slide here, what makes the main split? Soreness, mental stress. And if I'm looking at these pictures shown by veterinarians, right, and showing when they dissect a horse, how much damage we do to these animals, then I can see that horses, like this one here, this horse here is an Arab, watch how he gallops, right? They have high pain tolerance, but there is no movement in the SI joint, nothing. Very stiff spine. Look at that ewe-neck. Look at how this horse moves. Look at it one more time. Okay, there's no fluidity in the spine because again, the horse is a master in adapting, right? So what's happening here? The saddle twist, the saddle will stop hurting the horse, so the horses calcifies. In other words, starts getting kissing spine and all kinds of problems Dr. Catalina Thiersen has found in her research. Dr. Sue Dyson has written a wonderful report on the saddle slip as well. And she found in her research, often it relates to the hind lameness. So if we think about what Dr. Kerry Ridgway said years prior, and when we looking at the asymmetry, because a high heel and low heel problem, then it doesn't take a rocket science when you listen to all these experts worldwide. If I don't pay attention to the main split or the main direction, the interface, the saddle, will get pushed to one side and the rider will just follow. And now, if it pushes so hard against the back of the horse's spine, of course, it will be creating a problem in the SI joint, and then it triggers all the way down to the leg. So the big question is, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? If we know there is natural causes of the horses being uneven, or sometimes the horse's mane splits left on the shoulder, left on the front part of the neck and right side to the wither part of it, your saddle fitter, our saddle fitter, we at Schleser make it a huge point to really understand that orthopedic fitting is absolutely necessary to keep these horses alive, you in the center, in order not to run into this ever nightmare in creating more and more pain to you and the animal. And that is why we at Schleser are really proud to follow the philosophy from Saddle Fit for Life. Because Saddle Fit for Life is the only saddle fitting school which is approved, their curriculum is approved by the Ontario Veterinary Medical Association. If you have more question about your horse's mane or want to dive a little bit more deeper into it, please give us a call. And I guarantee you, one of our certified saddle ergonomists will help you to make you and your horse and your saddle more comfortable. So at this part, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to this lecture. I hope you find it informative, and please share it with people who you think can learn from that as well. And don't tell it to anybody if you don't like it. In this matter, thanks very much for listening. Until next time.